you guys for taking time out on a Thursday night. Pre-trip. Sorry about that. So we're going to go ahead and get things kicked off here. Hopefully everyone's got a good drink, settled. Alright guys. Shout out to the High Rise for hosting this event for us. Really appreciate everybody, all of our sponsor partners, all the competitors for the LCG Battle Royale. Thank you guys. This is it. So let's give you a little high level about the Connect community. This really was just a group of cultivators that got together, talked yang, talk about solutions, level each other up. That's what we're doing here, guys. We're just trying to level each other up, make some good relationships along the way, learn how to grow better fire. That's what we're here for. So I would love to go through every single one of our sponsors that put this event together tonight, but I'm going to spare you guys, so please thank everybody that's in participation tonight. We couldn't do this without you guys. Round of applause for everybody, please. Alright guys, I'm going to go ahead and let each panelist up here give a quick level of, a quick introduction of each other. Starting off with Mr. Bo.
Hello everyone, my name is Mo Corson. I'm the Director of Cultivation for AJ's Flowers. Super looking forward to talking to you guys tonight. Thank you all for coming out. Thank you Sergio for putting together a fucking show last night. Super excited to share some knowledge and get to know you guys more.
Appreciate you both.
Hey guys, my name is Joe Savino. I'm a cultivator. I've been cultivating for about 12 years at this point. I am just about to open up a facility in Massachusetts, so by the end of this year, I'm looking forward to that. And I want to really give a big shout out to Sergio for putting this together. He's been doing the Connect for a long time, and to really see what it's grown into, I really want to give a shout out to Sergio. Thank you.
That tagline down there is not just a cheesy tagline. Let's grow together is literally a statement. That's what we're trying to do here, guys. So appreciate that, Joe. Thank you.
I'm Chad Salou. I grew up from Nathan and Kush Alley, San Fernando Valley cultivator since late 90s. I'm so happy to be here. I think we've learned the most in the last 5 years in this professional field. People like Sergio, exposing us as experts in the field. It's amazing. It's amazing to see all you guys here. Yeah, see all of our team here over there, and insurance.
Love you, Chad.
I'm Sean Curtis. I grow for Zugatti LA, residential OG on the old Instagram. Been doing this for a long time, come from the trap days, and these are just the homies. It's cool to be here from just homies.
Shout out to Sean and all those killer memes leading up to this event.
What up, everyone? I'm Butcher. I grow for Kush Alley and Full Spectrum. I've been cultivating for about 20 years, and I'm excited to be a part of this panel and to sit here with some really inspiring people and to push the cultivation story in cannabis and to kind of bridge the gap between the brand and the cultivators and to inspire people. I wanna teach people and kind of share the passion that I have for cannabis. So I hope this place and this community is gonna accept that and run with me.
Appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for taking time. So what we're seeing up on the screen, Cultivation Chronicles. So a little bit about the Connect. We have different topics every month. And so that's what's really cool about all of these subject matter experts that are sitting literally in this room. We want to be able to bring those topics to educate the masses. That's what the Connect's about. So tonight, we're going to be talking about crop steering. Crop steering what? Candies. All right?
I was wondering if we could get a little ventilation right here, a little fan movement or something.
Do we have the fan on in the back? Is that possible? Okay, cool.
Gotta get the airflow, bro.
So part of the agenda, I'm just going to go through at high level. So we're going to do understanding candies, right? So talking a little bit about what are these genetics, how do they express, how do we bring the most genetic potential out of them with quality and yield. Balancing values. We're going to be touching on environmental controls, a lot of things that you need to keep in mind to bring out the best genetic potential of these. Data management. Cannot manage without measurement. We'll dive deep into that. Ripening post-processing. I digress. QA/QC, probably one of the most important parts here. I think we're all going to really dive deep into that part as well. And then some LCG considerations about that particular cultivar. So I want to give a shout out to MyFloraDNA because they have provided us with a really cool tool here. The CCI, the Certificate of Cultivar Information. It's a fingerprint. It's a trait-agnostic fingerprint. It's less than 3,000 snips, which means that you really don't know what you're looking at. It's literally just a fingerprint. So all the competitors that submitted their LCG, I think we all know this. We all know a version of a story of LCG. But that's not the point. We want to look at the fire. We want to understand all these different versions that are out there. But the science part of this that MyFloraDNA is providing us is that CCI. We're going to be able to look at all the genetic similarities. Literally just that. How close is one another of all these different LCGs that you guys are trying tonight? And we'll see that report in about 2 to 3 weeks. So shout out to MyFlora. Thank you guys. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and start off with understanding candies. I'm gonna tap into you on this one here because let's talk a little bit about the small bud trait of a traditional candy.
I mean, typically the smaller the structure, right? Like, you're not gonna have those big, fat Coke bottle size buds. When we talk about candies, they're traditionally, smaller, tighter, bubblier. That's all I got.
Joe?
I think it's one of those strains where you see it tends to be like a lot more degenerative in its nature. So
Speak up.
if
Get the mic closer.
Thank you.
So I think it's one of those things where, all right, so I think it's one of those things where it tends to be more generative, where we see that ripening, and I think it also has a line where when we push it too hard, we can kind of blow it out and not necessarily be so attractive. But in general, it is just one of those strains I think we all know. It just doesn't tend to produce like giant buds. It doesn't stack super well.
There you go.
Yeah.
Right, so a lot of those things, right? So small buds, how are you gonna get weight on the small buds? Well, you gotta get it to stack. How do you get it to stack? You gotta run it more generatively. So that's really what we're gonna be talking and diving deep on, guys, is how do you grow this more productively while you're still maintaining the quality? So we just touched on the generative tendency. How about controlling stretch? What are some things that you wanna lead off with about controlling stretch in the brand?
Well, me and Butcher and the team worked really hard on because we did some double stacks and we got set up with really short sticks, like under 60 inches, some at 41 inches. One of the big things that we found, we used a substrate from not going a stacking from veg to flower. It was just the same substrate all the way through. So we didn't get that initial stretch when we saw the stacked cube on top of cube. We get a lot of dry back on the top cube. We cut down maybe a third of the stretch on that. And the other thing we found is really I don't have the fancy sensors. We haven't worked with those yet. We've worked with the ProSense, but would love Aurora to maybe bless us with some, or Rhoda to bless us with some. But we found sizing the substrates, the plant size we want, is really key for us to get the dry back we want to achieve by the end of the flower. By not overgrowing the plant with the substrate, so we don't have to water at night, but just perfectly sized. It's a lot of feel, and it's a lot of working with the plant. We're literally sitting there, watching feeds go through, kind of measuring the runoff percentage. That's a lot of manual stuff. So I see where you guys are coming from, that data-driven. Do we want that? But do the good old-fashioned kind of looking at the plant.
The sensors do help because like I have two sensors in one room. I have like two sensors in one room, right? But it helps me understand a bigger picture. I can go put my hands on it, and then there's a number to put to that, and you can kind of learn to balance the sensor with feel and bridge that old school with the new school, you know what I mean? Because I still think you need some of that old school personal touch on it. That's part of the medicine and really getting the best out of it, I think. You can't solely rely on the sensor.
Yeah, and I think there's going to be a couple of things that you have to consider when coming into, stretch. I mean, especially for LCG. I find that LCG isn't really a stretchy cultivar. It's not like some of the cultivars that we run that are really tall, right? So, if anything, it seems to be one of those ones that we try to encourage stretch with, right? And I think, there's a couple of things that we can do to even control stretch in the canopy, right? One is how long you veg for, right? So, how long we're vegging for. And then the other is going to be plant density, right? So, if you have a lower plant density, your plants aren't competing for plant height, right? So you can control, have more density filled evenly spread apart. So, and then decide to choose whether or not you should feed generatively or vegetatively, right? And when to push those signals, depending on where you want the height of your plant to start or finish. And big shout out to again, Royale. We get to see a lot of that data because, we get to see that on the road, so shout out.
For sure. And one thing that is really important, which I'm sure we're going to dive into as well, is understanding your stretch behavior. It's 1x, 2x, 3x. So plant density, this is something that I think a lot of people are just trying to think that more plants equate to more yield, which, I think that's where understanding the measurements and really diving deep into those cultivars is going to be more helpful.
It's pretty interesting as we're starting to play around with basically plant load. It's basically, how many plants per square foot we're putting into these rows and the lighting that we're giving these plants, the irrigation that we're giving these plants. We're starting to see that we can really affect the ratio of smalls by basically reducing the number of plants in the row. And again, you start to see a lot more photosynthesis going on the lower part of, your canopy. It ends up being a lot less, kind of larvier, smaller buds.
Way more developed. It's purple and ripe all the way through to the bottom. Nice, tripe production all the way through.
That quick veg time too, the bottoms are a little easier to deal with too, your airflow and some of that, those little noodly loose branches that come from older plants that have lots of cloning off of something before you flip it. It isn't there, and that helps with that quality at the bottom.
I think one thing to, especially with LCG and a lot of these other candies, that ripening part of flower that lasts 2-3 weeks really makes a huge difference in the quality of it. And I think it's one of those strains where you really need to have it in order, like that great ripening to have in order for, the strains really shine through. You really see through the color, trait production, nose, flavor. It's one of the ones I think that stands out. It's why it's so popular.
I want to go back to what Mo said on plant density, and it's something I think there's a disconnect between owners and cultivators, and we go off the metric of per light or something like that. Really should be per square foot, gram per square foot per day, because some of these finish faster, some of these finish longer, and honestly, plant density, we've proven it. Lower that plant density, you're going to get better buds all the way through, and it's just something like you gotta show them. You're out there and you're growing. You gotta show them, and the proof's in the pudding, all the way down the line. The trimmers get to it, it's faster trim, it's better product. So I feel strongly about that.
That's something that's kind of interesting with production cultivation is you have to deal with trimmers. Trimmers are great, but you know what I'm saying. So if your product is easy to trim, you can lose a lot. You can lose a point, lose 2 points on the back. You can totally change what you're working with. So you have to grow it good. You can't cover it up on a production scale. And the LCG is kind of sensitive, at least for me, on some shit with like tiny little tippers, and then there's like a little tiny seed, tiny. Everybody's like, I don't know what you're talking about, but it's in there. Yeah, but so it's hard.
It's LCG, it's really difficult. And for it to we're in the commercial game, right? We're here to make money too, right? So we want to grow a good amount of it, right? Without losing quality, right? So where do you find that medium? How much is that medium, right? And curing, drying, that becomes the next part. right? Testing, making sure that it's clean, right? Yeah, I mean, it's candies, you know, being not traditionally configured milk, right? Like generally like dry fasters, right? And so, do you dry out your substrate before you cut down? Do you hydrate it, right? Are you like, you know, how are you compensating for workflow of those things while you're doing it as well? So, but no, I agree with you 100%. Lemon cherry gelato is one of the most, like, it's a little bitch. Like, I fucking, like, you know, you got fucking, like, yeah, like, you know, sometimes it doesn't like a lot of light. Like, if you put, I don't know about you guys, but when I put my lemon cherry gelato in our rooms, like, we got 100% on that shit. It does not love, like, you know, like, every other time with praise in the sky, right? But lemon cherry gelato, like, you know, you gotta get it up a little bit, right? So we start, like, you know, 70, 75%, and then we'll, like, go into, like, an 80, 90% within a couple, 3 days, or by day 7, we're fine on it. You know, 100%. And again, how do we know this stuff? It's because we're tracking it, right? We have tools, right? We have tools that allow us to record those data daily, and training, you know, and training our cultivators to be able to, you know, care about those things gives us way better results, right? And so, you know, lots of available tools nowadays to grow amazing, you know, products.
You know, I think one really important thing to remember is, I think a lot of cultivators, a lot of operators right now are separating themselves kind of from the rest of the pack. You know, it's not like, you know, it's not just growing it really well, it's how you're ripening it, what's your post-processing like. You know, Sean, trimmers, you know, as cultivators you spend, you know, basically 3 months working these plants, you know, from start to finish, and all of a sudden, you know, the trimmer touches it in the course of the day, and, you know, it can totally change the way that flower looks. So it's, you know, drying it, the right, you know, water activity level, the right moisture content, you know, how you preserve those terps, they all start to play huge roles. So
I was just gonna hit that moisture content.
okay,
That's something I've been really focusing on in the dry and cure. Like where's that range? You know what I mean? Because as soon as you take it out for processing, the shelf life starts. You know, and yeah, it's a tough one to go after. And like, where do you look? You know, there's some. What is there? Tobacco. That's another combustible, smokable product that they want to preserve flavor.
you know, look, I think one important thing is, look, you have to look at how the whole post-processing works, and you've got it in a dry room for however long, you've brought it down to whatever moisture content you want, or water activity level, and then, you know, you start to think about this kind of stuff. If you have a room and you have, you know, a bunch of trimmers in that room, everybody's, you know, breathing, expelling moisture, so all of a sudden, you know, there's way more humidity. In flour, you know, it's like a sponge. It's going to suck that moisture up. So all of a sudden, you could have dried this flour, and all of a sudden, you make it too wet. You know, all of a sudden, it start bagging up. So I think it's really important that we look at the whole, you know, post-processing, and even, you know, dry room, you really want to keep it as low, you know, below 65 and around 60% relative humidity. How it's, you know, storage is basically the same thing.
So, steering candies. So one thing I noticed too, we talked about earlier too, is that, you know, we have our traditional paths right now that I think, you know, if you're into the crop steering and being able to see, you know, what a P1 phase 1 feeding is, a P2 feeding is, how often we feed generally and vegetatively to bulk of when those time periods are. LCG isn't as typical as, you know, a strain that does grow bigger and better, right? So when we're talking more generative, it doesn't necessarily mean to be like straight generative, right? There are times that like the drybacks in between your shots that would normally be like your P2 or veg are just longer in between, right? So 5 to 10% instead of like 1 to 3%. And I find that helps keep the morphology a lot tighter without sacrificing too much yield as well, right? So if you can control that, and you know, as you lower UC throughout the period until harvest, right, throughout your own cycle, you know, osmotic pressure changes as well in your substrate, and so that will affect the morphology of the bud structure as well, right? So keep feeding it at 3.0, you know, one way will make, you know, your blend plants look differently than you would defeat, 3.0 and taper it down to ideally maybe like a 1.8. There's also a lot of things going on right now with people putting nitrogen or reducing nitrogen, as NPK, completely removing calcium nitrates. The last couple days before harvest, going into chloride instead. A lot of different methods,
Well, why are people removing nitrogen?
Why? It helps them get their purple, right? So it's going to help push more phosphorus and help finish, right? I'm sorry. Potassium phosphorus. I can't. I smoked a lot of weed tonight. So.
That's a great point. So when you're removing something, you're removing an element from that plant. What's it doing to the plant's plant health optimization?
Again, look, a lot of what we're doing, especially the last couple of weeks, is really trying to force the plant to ripen and really kind of deliver that finished product that kind of we're all looking for.
Especially with LCG, right? Like everybody wants fucking purple LCG. If you're in LA, like you have green LCG, it's not like we'll still buy it, but like they want the perks, So the big thing is how do we produce that, right? And how do you track that? And what can your room do? How do you test those things? Right? What are the limits that you have within your facility, right? Or your grow area, wherever.
A lot of us cultivators don't have the perfect facility. We're gonna have 80% seed spikes at night. What's up? Okay. And you're gonna have to deal with it. Like it kind of sucks. And this is one of the things with LCG is one of what he's talking about. Like sometimes we'll cool down the facility to make it ripen faster. Not something we like to do, but sometimes you have to do it. Sometimes we encourage that dry back a little more to make it turn purple or something like that. I personally like green wheat. Like that's my thing right there. I know like a lot of people, like it's the purple candy, that's the craze. I'm probably gonna get blasted by this, but
A round of applause for growing green wheat, please.
I think our LCG cut for Finest, it's a little more green. It's a really fire cut. If you guys see Savon here, it came from him. Yeah, and it's really good. And a lot of these breeders are bringing us just badass genetics, and it seems like
A little bit louder.
Okay. I'm gonna ramble on, but about being able to control your facility with what you got. The best you can. And it's not always perfect, but we can do a lot with temperature, humidity, dry backs, and media, controlling it all. So.
One thing I want to ask the crew up here, what do those micro changes do? What happens if your environment's off? What happens with VPD? Joe, how long does it take for the stomata to open versus close?
Depending on the scenario, stomata can shut down incredibly quickly for just a couple of minutes and then take hours to basically open up again and plants for basically resume transpiration and keep going. So it's so critical to manage swings, it's so critical to manage your environment, and then a huge piece of that is irrigation. And again, we're looking, media sizing and how we irrigate to actually get what we want, reducing nitrogen levels, how we're affecting EC within the substrate, where we're, swinging it, throughout the day. So all these things that we're kind of looking at consistently on a day-to-day and trying to affect it.
So we're trying to maximize transpiration of that plant, right? So when you have an environmental swing like that for a couple of minutes, that's going to take the plant how many hours to recharge and actually open up at the end to have full transpiration capability. That's quality. That's impacting the overall plant yield and the overall plant health. So,
real quick, hey guys, to everybody over there, if you guys can talk a little, just put the mic close and talk loud. What do I have to echo?
it helps if you put it like near your chin.
Yeah, just put it close and just project a little loud.
Okay, all right, I got you.
There you go. Yeah. So I want to hear you in the back.
So me and Butcher, we do a lot of pH checks, EC checks. We actually don't stack EC. I know that's a big difference.
Right there, better, thank you.
And I want to learn the methods, obviously, because I think we can up our game a little bit. But we feed, honestly, keep the pH and EC where it's supposed to be. And like if we see it drop, we'll feed more. If we see it raise, it's usually a pH adjustment we have to give, and we got to get that down.
So quick question: where do you guys typically finish temperature-wise, like LCG, like the last week or something?
Low 70s
During the day?
during the day.
What about at night?
68, 65.
Mo?
Yeah.
Ish? Range?
Yeah, it's about there. 70 during the day, 63 at night.
Yeah.
Wait, a quick question, was that lighting source dependent?
Lighting source dependent.
Because, look, this goes back into like ripening / flushing, because I think we all do certain things in terms of, I think, dropping CO2 levels, dropping blight levels, and we showed that last week. We're trying to really force that, the stresses for signal ripening.
Guys, I do want to remind you that we will have a Q&A after we pump through a couple more slides. Like, we're going to dive into this, so please think about the questions. Thank you for asking, that's a good one. And we'll get into it. Data management. Mo, do you want to touch on this briefly?
Sure. Yeah. Data management is key to your growth for sure. I think, without knowing how you are, how effective you're running in your operation, you'll never be able to fix the areas that you need to improve on, right? So the only way to really do that is to measure. So, again, shout out to Royale, right? I think they have a great system for helping us do that when it comes to, from metrics integrations to data recording. We've been working with a different kind of software, Cultivation IQ, over at AJ's, which helps us track things, go through each process where we get to learn, what our propagation rates are into veg, what our veg rates are into flower, right? Being able to integrate those to get individual wet weights throughout for each plant, be able to measure, the grams per square foot, measuring your smalls to your big ratios, things to be able to, look and make, business decisions on, laying out your plant schedule. And so, what genetics you want to lay out based on, what they can produce. So, LCG, typically for us, it's ranged, but I think lately, we know that with a current plant density of 2.2 to 2.5 square feet per plant, you will have a small to big ratio of about 5 to 10%, right? And so I know that if I go wider than that, I may lose yield, but I may decrease my small numbers right down to 1%. And so that makes my decision, well, okay, what do I want, right? Do I want that more yield? Do I want, and that's how we can assign those things to the locations that they end up going with, in the grow rooms according to our plan.
That's a great point, Mo. Along with pheno hunting. I love the pheno hunting feature
Pheno
that's in
hunting
their
as well, right? Being able to record those traits, what those plants are doing, right? And then even as to how do you order something in your facility, right? How does somebody order something, right? Do they go and tell the managers that says, hey, we're out of this, and the manager has to remember and go get some of that, right? And all of a sudden somebody forgets something and doesn't come, and now oh shit, I need to call somebody because now I need cash to go to the store to get this fucking thing that I should have.
So work order management, whether it's supplies or issues or reporting in general, IPM scouting, whatever it might be. And this is a phenomenal scheduling. Exactly. So guys, this is an awesome addition to using something like GrowSense or Royale or some sort of data management system for your cultivation. So Mo, shout out to you for putting this thing together because it's badass, it's amped, it's really giving you the tools as a cultivator that you can really have a full scale capturing of every single piece of data. John?
So Mo, we use Slack, so we'd love to use yours because Slack is kind of
It's all about how you use the software, I don't say that there's one right piece for everybody. Everybody's got a method, on how they do it, But the cool thing about using the technology we have is that a lot of it is customizable, right? To everybody's processes, right? Because not everybody's going to do the same thing over and over, right? Everybody has their recipe to success, right? Especially with LCG, yeah.
Especially with LCG.
I just wanted to add to the sensor thing.
On your chiplets.
I wanted to add to the sensor thing. It's important to get the data that Mo was talking about, but I found some real improvements in efficiency by using sensors on the equipment that we use to let us know when it's in operational mode and working correctly. And you can set alerts on those things to let you know if any of your equipment goes down, so you can identify a problem quickly and get right to it. That I think will affect the data that you're speaking about. You know what I mean? You can make informed decisions. You know.
I mean, and it'll save you, right? I worked at a grow before where like the AC or electricity went out, and all of a sudden the room starts heating up, and it's 105 degrees, and hey, Roy sent you an alert that says, yo, your shit's about to burn down, right? Like, go save it, right? So,
You know, like that's the thing I've seen happen in multiple different facilities where they didn't have like a light shut off or something going on. You know, the AC stops working and then the DUs keep going and the lights keep going and the room basically fries itself. It's happened a bunch of times. I think just, you know, hopefully having a system that either alerts you or also trying to build in redundancy or system. I think between us, there's a lot of mistakes we've all gone through, and you know, growing this thing, especially with the transformation from, you know, where it's been to what it is now. It's, I think we all joke and laugh about what it's been, the mistakes we've gone through.
How many rooms have you flooded, Joe?
I've had some bad floods, unfortunately, but again, make
and
mistakes.
Jack Whittle taught me, he's like, if you're not flooding the facility, you're not doing it right.
I would say cultivators are great as fuck. I mean, we come up with some shit, and Richard was talking about the sensors on the equipment. And you know, as we elevate our game and we understand this equipment, you know, when you're running with ACs, if you're running the AC on a short cycle, you're not pulling out much moisture. But if you have 5 ACs in your facility, maybe you stage a few, they run fucking longer all day, and they pull out a ton of moisture. So it's like working with what you got, because we have about 20 DUs in there, 6 ACs, having all the sensor on the equipment, looking at the cycle times, looking at the temperatures these things are putting out. I mean, you know, we're doing HVAC work, we're doing electrical work, we're trying to figure this shit out from the understanding of how all this equipment works. I mean, I started getting into reheats recently. I know it's a big controversial subject, but we had some really good luck. It cost a lot of power. You know, but the spikes from night to day, it helped a lot.
Ripening and post-processing. To flush or not to flush?
That is the question. Everybody wants to know this one. Everybody. I don't know, dude. It's a day-old fucking battle right here.
I think a big part of this is like, what's the definition of flushing?
Great point, Joe.
So, you know, that's why I kind of always go more towards ripening, because, you know, I think we use, especially in the past, I've used flushing as a way to really kind of like ripen the plant, or what I perceive to be ripening the plant. So
what are you flushing out, right?
Flushing for me is correcting the pH or the EC in the meat. That's what we do. And we usually flush with our nutrient formula that we're feeding with every day.
adjusting your substrate.
Adjusting our substrate. And ripening for us is lowering our EC. We still have EC, but we lower it because the plant's not eating as much. So when we use a ripening formula. But yeah, flushing for us is always correct, adjusting the substrate.
So, flushing for some people is going to like 1.8 EC last day finish, or is that like pure RO flush?
I think it matters on the nutrient you're using. I think it matters. You know, when we use GH, we flush with maybe a 1.2. You know, so but we're highest. There's like 2.2, 2.4. If we were to use HGV, we might be at 3.5 on the highest, and then going out to maybe a 1.8. You know, we're all kind of watching we do a lot of the readings of what we're getting on our leaching, and that's telling us, you guys have the meters, and it's telling you right then, but then we do a lot of testing on our leaching.
You raise EC towards the end?
It depends. I mean, raising EC, there's so many different variables, right? Whether you're growing an LED, whether you're Rockwell, whether you're Cocoa, whether you're HPS, right? So
Environment.
Yeah, to say, so I don't want to say yes and spike EC. I do in certain cases. I would say, you know, flushing out nitrogen, right, is the thing that we want to end up doing, right? And so I think it's a yes and a no, right? Like, yes, you do flush, but no, you don't, right? You don't have to want to get the plant out of nutrients, right? Or, you you don't want to give it a complete flush, right? And then also, you know, there's different theories as to when lemon cherry gelato should be pulled, right? Is it a day 50? Is it a 56 day, 55 day, 61 day? Do you push it, you know, longer? I've seen people go to 70, right? And so, depending on when that day is that you think LCG finishes, like when do you set those ripening signals and how do you set those ripening signals, right? And then what does that mean, right? So room temperature changes, right, from your bulking to where it's typically warmer to now let's see those, you know, cooler nights and cooler days, right? So that along with trying to maintain the right water content or moisture within the actual bud through the dry and the cure process to make it too trim, so by the time that it lands in someone's hand, it smells fire as fuck, it looks pretty, right? Versus, you know, not maintaining those and it sends up to somebody's hand in 3 months and it's oxidized and yellow and, you know, nobody wants to smoke that shit. So, yeah, I think it's, you know, there's a lot of different ways to get there too, right? And so, I love what you guys said about, you know, how you guys write it and how you guys are measuring. So you guys are just pushing runoff, right? And collecting runoff data and being able to see where your pH and your DC is and make adjustments from there, right?
Right, and the media, reducing the media size this time has allowed us to really speak, a lot of feeds, but also get those stressing drybacks to happen, you know, and you can ripen it that way.
And so, you know, LCG2, I don't know about for anybody else, but for me personally, it'll be the death of me. It's the most annoying thing about growing LCG is the tip burning at the end, you know. And then it's like there's so many different genetics that you can get, you know, that without, but that one, like it's the most difficult plant I've ever tried to get to finish. So if anybody's got tips on that,
You could run it 3 EC while you're bulking, or 15 EC, and it's still gonna fucking just like whoop.
just no matter what. I've gone to a 1.8 and I've been through the whole way. It just burns.
I did, so look, all of the LCG thing that's going on, Pound Cake's farm, they don't have the little tips.
Yeah, they say it was fire.
So ask
Fire.
It was fire.
Dude, everybody out there, shout
Shout out Pound Cakes.
Shout out to all the growers that fucking put their LCG in today, because yo, there's some fucking talented motherfuckers here for sure.
I just want to give a shout out to everybody that competed tonight. There's some fucking heat on this table over here. If you guys have not seen these jars, please be sure you do. We got Bruno on the table over here rolling them up too, so please enjoy.
Make sure you vote too.
Please make sure you vote, yes. The winner's gonna get that strap. So,
Trying to look like the Rock out here.
So Sean, typically where's your EC finishing?
At the end,
Yeah.
I don't even look at it. Let that shit just spike up to 30.
So what kind of media, what kind of setup are you into that allows you to
I'm
do
doing
that?
it in Rockwool. I used to flush in cocoa, and you can flush in cocoa and watch this, you know, you watch your grapes go down. But in Rockwool's a little harder, and I was, because I was arguing with Mo. I was like, dude, you gotta flush, dude, get out of here. But you don't have to flush it. I watch for my tip burn, and then I just cut some newts out at the end to save a week of nutrients.
What day do you guys cut down
63.
at? 63?
That's not good for weeks. But like, it's like 8.5.
Sean,
We're typically at like 61.
Sean, at what date do you start adding pamplemousse LaCroix for the flush?
Usually, week 7 is when I start all my stuff, all my secret stuff. But there's one thing.
You ever tried to live with that?
No, dude, that's weird. Spray. But there was this I got to meet a bunch of like consultants working with this old company that I was with, and the crop consultant to Phillips came through. He's like an old garden wizard, you know what I mean? And he told me something about pre-night. And so what you do is you set your night differential to start 2 hours roughly before your lights go out. So it's gonna get cold in your room, but you're still gonna have the lights making some radiant heat on the damn shit. Yeah. That's my secret for you guys.
It's a method that certain greenhouse growers we use for like tomatoes and stuff. So it's basically, you know, to help the sugars assimilate from where they're being produced, like on the leaves, and then basically get the sugars sent to the fruit where the production is actually happening.
carbohydrate allocation.
You know, that's a big thing too, I think, with why the dry farming and a lot of the kind of concentrated flavor in a lot of ways.
See?
That's the real magic in the end, right? That dissipation of carbohydrates, right? You want that process to finish. You want the starches turn to sugars. You want to get that whole process complete.
Guys, take a look at the screen here. Let's talk about some of these plants over here. What's going on?
There we go. Why are my toes burning? Yeah, I mean, ride them hard, dude. You know, like, ride them hard. Yeah.
This happened in the middle of a 108 light room on a plant we'd run for years. There you go.
I wish we could zoom in.
Yeah, but for any of those that can't see, it's literally like a giant branch of a single plant that totally hermed out through sacks. It's not just like, you know, like a sacker here. It was literally the whole thing turned into a male.
So beware of some intersex traits in these candies. What else? What else? What are some key takeaways from LCG before we wrap up and go into the Q&A?
You know, I think it's definitely way more one of the finicky strains we see on the commercial side. Again, one of the big things up here is you have to figure out how to make this stuff commercially viable in terms of strain, how it's working your environment, how much you're able to produce, how you're able to control your costs. Look, especially in today's evolving market, we're seeing pricing falling. Every small edge that we can drive, an increase in yield, an increase in production, increase in quality that drives a better price. Those are all a huge advantage now, especially if, you know, we're seeing so many people go out of business. This is becoming a tougher and tougher environment to play in terms of the way federal legalization is going to play out and the way that we're seeing this market evolve. I think, again, it's so important why so many things, again, it's kind of truly unlocking how to make these strains work for us as operators and cultivators.
Joe, I mean, we were using Advance back in the day with 16 different parts. I gotta say, keep it simple. I don't want to say the stupid part, but keep it simple because it really does work. If you get all your environment correctly and you're monitoring your drybacks and you're using the correct nutrients, you're gonna grow fine.
I was telling Joe to add some shit instead of just use the base. Because it makes a difference. The old recipes make a difference. It makes you feel better.
You know, what Sean's referencing is, you know, I'm a big advocate of keep it simple. Like, to the utmost degree, I don't use any additives. You know, typically I use like HGV, JR Crop-Tech, used Athena before. Like, I really try and keep it as simple as possible. I try not to get fancy. There's people that way more understand nutrients and how the plants uptake than I do. I let them do all the thinking.
Which is great about, one thing I want to do a shameless plug of Connect. We have a lot of the same people within the same subcategory. This is perspective. The one-stop solution for everybody is not the case here. We want you guys to understand that there's other options. Because your farm may not have the best optimal control and climate. You may not have that extra DU. You may not have the staff to be able to maintain a proper plant density. So it's perspective, guys. That's what this is about.
Yeah, what we do a lot is R&D. So if a product works, we'll do a side-by-side. And a lot of times, you don't see a big difference. So that's going on that keep it simple. We just use 3 salts, water, you know, maybe some hypochlorous acid to keep it sterile. We run sterile. Like our facilities, we are a very sterile facility. We don't do a lot of beneficials. Bug supplies we do, and maybe spraying plants to do, but in the actual root zone, we don't. Because we've had issues with our biofilm in our lines, or, you know, so we found the best ways is a real simple formula and sterile all the way through.
A big part to commercial success is consistency, and a big part of that, especially running a facility of business, is maintenance of a lot of equipment to make sure that, you know, it's not, you know, if DQ going down, AC's going down during flower, start to have huge effects on quality that really start to cost you a lot of revenue. So it's, you know, a lot of this maintenance stuff, and I don't know a lot of people that are have big commercial facilities that are running beneficials and stuff. And props to the people that do. Kevin Crouch Delighted. He's one of the bigger guys I know that's, a lot of likes, a lot of square footage that's running beneficials and doing it well and successfully. But, he's got a crazy regimen for maintenance, for dripper maintenance, and, again, a lot of that stuff is just figuring it out. Props to him for doing it. I think that's a big piece of what makes a good cultivator is there isn't necessarily some standard formula, some standard model. It's all kind of, figuring it out, giving a little clues and making them figure it out.
Problem solving.
Yeah, I mean,
Like, how do you act in that moment? You have the moment, how quick do you get to those resources and your information to make a decision, because it's going to happen. Everything's going to keep happening,
Yeah, and to add to both your points, I think the reason for success is to be aware of those things, but to have the right people, the right resources for your people to make sure that those things are executed, right? And if, all this stuff is great, but if we don't have the right people and the right leaders in the building to be able to move these things and make these things happen and track these things, they're only as good as knowing it. So, the execution and having the team and a good culture, is what leads to the consistency to be able to, have people that know what, have a good eye for the plant that can do room sky, that you can entrust, right? That ultimately leads to your success, right? People.
I'll build on that. The network what Sergio's putting here, he knows I've called him for issues I had. He's come correct, talking to fellow cultivators to we can skip that failure rate we used to do back in the day. We failed a bunch of other times. So having this network is huge. Being able to talk about these issues that we come across and then leaning on your experience to get us out of this. I mean, there's professionals, there's academics in the field now, and you need to use these resources. You need to, if you're using GrowDN, you need to reach out to those reps and talk to them. If you're using GH, you need to reach out to the tech services, HGB. It's not black market anymore, guys. We have to use these resources to up ourselves. And they're there for us. They want to be there for us. They want us to succeed. So, I definitely...
Shout out to the CCI book. I was a part of it with Jack here. If anybody hasn't seen it yet or read it, this book is amazing, especially for learning cannabis cultivation in a commercial setting. Everything, I got to be a part of the photography part of it, and then sign later on. But I think if you guys are looking for a good resource, great place to look at those things.
It's a phenomenal foundation. And Jack, I believe
This
we are
is
going to be raffling
CCI
off.
book.
Going to be raffling off a couple CCI books tonight, so make sure that if you did RSVP, you're going to be one of the lucky contestants to actually get a CCI book compliments of Ripple Effect. Thank you, guys. All right, the Battle Royale. This is dope, guys. I'm really happy that this came together in the way that it did. We have Big Sean over here, residential. So
Inspiration for this whole thing.
big time. So we all understand there's some weird shit going on with spring packs. It's just, we're calling bullshit on that. But we want to be able to showcase the fire, obviously. There's a lot of different genetics out there. They might be the same, who knows? Like I talked about earlier, we're going to be able to get molecular ID, CCI, and then we're going to be able to compare the similarities of them. What we are going to also be doing here is just making sure that there's criteria, right? So people's choice, everyone down here, be sure that you vote. That's worth 1 point. And we had a curated panel of judges that got the first take, and they're worth 2 points. So we're going to take a cumulative approach. And I asked the judges to take a bit more depth in the actual testing itself. So they had several questions that they had to go through. So it's communal, guys. We're not trying to put anybody down on this. It's really about showcasing the hate, because there's a lot of fucking hate out there. So
All that we is fire as fuck.
And Sergio, we talked about this before that I wasn't gonna judge before the panel, bro, because I got way too high. I'm not athletic like some of these judges up there that are conditioned for it.
So let's give a shout out to, we got all of our contestants up here. We got Residential and Zugatti, we've got Maven, we've got AJ's, we've got Root Down Genetics, we've got Puka International, we got Ball Family Farms, we got Legion of Dank, We got Source Cannabis, Kush Alley, and Pound Cakes Farm, and the Cure Company.
Yeah.
So like I said, guys, be sure that you do try this out. Now we're going to move into the Q&A. I know we're going a little bit past time, but I do want to just open it up if anybody has any questions right now. This is your time. If you have anything, we've got access to some folks. Jack, name and where you're from.
My name's Jack. I live in Durango, Colorado, and Palm Springs. I was curious. What are the parameters that you guys are looking for in the leaching? And like, if it gets like above or below, where would you be?
Yeah, so primarily we use Rockwool, and we have noticed, and you know, I've talked to our fellow cultivators, that we'll go between cocoa and Rockwool, all depending on the facility. If it's a startup, cocoa usually is our first choice because it's a little easier to control. But we've done the side-by-sides, and we've noticed that Rockwool maybe produces a better flower for us. But the parameters look like in veg. If we see it go above 6.4, it's cute to flush it. And we definitely have seen a stall out. We have seen that stall out happen. We don't check the EC as much. It usually rides the same.
You're mostly measuring pH?
Mostly it's pH. Mostly it's pH. We'll look at the EC, right? Because root rot or something like that, I mean, pH will adjust with root rot. But if the EC is super high, maybe we'll adjust it a little lower in the input feed.
So in Rockwool, you guys are feeding at, what's your feed pH?
Usually, it depends veg and whatever, but it's usually around 5.5, 5.6.
So 5.6 out, then about 6.4
Yeah.
after the runoff.
Oh yeah, we'll do, and that's like from initial plug. And I will say, and I don't want to throw too many brands under the bus, but we were using a certain brand that was super high in the pH, and they say they're in there. So I don't know, man. But after a soak, after a soak and checking the leachate off of that and having a 6.8 or a 7.4, and then we do another brand and we're right in that 5.6 range. But we have noticed on initial plug in the first week, 4 days to get a tap root and retest again, and it was above 6.5, we're flushing.
It's one of the things I think that we always end up talking about is how the consistency of certain substrates, cocoa, depending on, because it's basically an agricultural product. It's the environment, years, depends on like hurricanes, typhoons, whatever it is, storms, affects literally like the fiber, and then again, who's actually blending it and what ratio they're using. It gets really crazy to start to see how brands can really change suppliers and consistency and quality. Again, it's one of the things we always talk about is like, how do we deliver consistent results, to help us survive? So,
I don't know if I answered your question or if you have some feedback on that. That's
what percentage? So like, what percentage runoff are you typically trying to look for?
In veg, 20-30%. In flower, maybe it goes from that 20% down to 10% or lower, all depending. I'm pretty frugal. I count pennies on the cultivation, so I don't like to waste a lot of money on that.
Great question, Jack. Thank you. Anybody else?
My name is David. I'm from Los Angeles. What substrates do you guys use? You mentioned
I recently went into 1 gallon cocoa bags. Before that, I was with Rockwool slabs, 10-liter Rockwool slabs, 3 pounds per there. We still veg in Rockwool, 4 Delta 6s or 4x4 by 2.5s, and now we stack those onto 1 gallon cocoa bags. I've grown LCG probably about 15 times, 16 times, probably about 20 times in Rockwool. Grown it about, I don't know, 4 times now, maybe in cocoa. And I don't know if it's a placebo effect, I don't know. There's, sometimes people are like, hey, it's cocoa, or it's living soil, or it's Rockwool, and there's a difference, but I don't know. I feel like they were both pretty damn fire. But
out of curiosity, did you notice a bigger yield in grams per square foot in one substrate to the next?
Still figuring that out. I think it's still need a couple more runs to get some more consistency on these first rounds to be able to compare it to what we could do on the rock.
But let's also talk about your grams per square foot average on LCG at AJ's. What are you guys averaging?
I'd say it's around 80. Yeah.
about like upper 70s to 80s. We'll sometimes get up there where it's closer to the higher 80s on a really crazy good run. They're typically mid to high 70s. 80s.
That is not common for candies. These small bud trait cultivars, that's not common at all. So again, the generative steering, the controlling of the bulking phase, setting it up for bulking, understanding that's impressive with that kind of quality. Very impressive.
I wanted to so we'll use a different media depending on the situation. Like open in a facility, a lot of times we'll go with cocoa. If we notice there's an uptick in fusarium, we notice cocoa, and this is just our notice. Cocoa has a little more protection against that than rock wool, so we'll switch it up there. I think it all depends. Your growing style. I'll go side by side on it. Like right now, we notice that rock wool is just producing better flowers.
So I think the best thing to do is just experiment, right? Like be able to prove both, right? And I think rock wool, you're gonna end up needing way more data, like in sensors, and being able to see a lot more. It's less forgiving, right? That's when you have to make those decisions ASAP, right? So you're constantly on it. Where cocoa is not necessarily. I know people say it's easier. I think it's just more forgiving. I don't think it's easier, right? Especially depending on cocoa and what's consistency and what's made of it too.
So I started growing a long time ago. I was like soil 5-gallon pots, adjust the wings, air-cooled goods, starting off. What I've found, it depends really a lot on the facility, but it's cocoa and rockwood seem to be the two ones that people are consistently succeeding with. It's a common theme with a lot of successful operators.
It's a good question. Thank you. What other questions do we have?
Zach from Oakland, California. What ECs are you guys pushing for the new chapter?
I'm in cocoa in HPS on a bench for about 12 days. And when we flip to flower, we'll go at 3.5 EC probably for the first 3 to 5 days. And then gradually
at the dripper, right?
At the dripper. Gradually scale down to 3. And then I've ran where I've gone 3 EC the entire round. I've gone where I ran 3 down to like 1.8 towards the end too. So I'd suggest doing both so that you can see what the morphology of the plant looks like when it is that you want to make that decision later. But which one do I like more? Well, if you go 3 you're a little bit tighter. And so I like that. I don't want them as big and fluffy, so I like that. Certain strains going down to like the mellows 8. Going down to like a 1.8, like bubbles out and gets really, really pretty. So I think it's strain dependent, genetic dependent, for sure.
Good question, Zach. Thank you. Question back here.
Yeah. Alex Comer. More on the brand creative side, partners with Jack. But I do wonder, so if someone's just getting into crop steering, you think there's like variables more important to pay attention to? Or you should just get used to those like Aurora charts all together at once? Or is there a good place to start at? Pay attention to the phases? Like, how do you think you should begin that process?
I think a lot of successful cultivation operations start with control first over environment. A lot of this goes back to kind of the basics, the foundations. You can't succeed and operate at a high level if some of your basic operations, basic SOPs aren't designed for success or aren't set up for success. To let your employees succeed. So much of it now, compressed markets, we have to look for every edge that we can pick up.
I've only grown weed with Royale, right? So like I know how to grow weed without it, but I've only grown weed with Royale. So how important is it to learn that and do that? I think it's immediate. I think it's something you should always do, but it's collect as much data as possible, especially with your genetics are doing that make you the money that you make. So I mean, is there a way around? There's a lot of good information out there. Lots of companies are putting out lots of good information on what to look for as far as like P1s and P2s and P3s are and what those signal means and how to feed those and whatnot. Yeah, definitely. There's resources everywhere, and I'll definitely start immediately.
So I kind of want to understand the question because we're not using the data driven right now. We're going to I think after this panel because we really want to get into it. But we do the visual clues of the plants. Like looking at leaf position, feeling the substrate, looking at runoff, like the percentage runoff, and you're feeding a volume of every day. Maybe it's a liter, maybe it's a liter and a half. What are you feeding that plant? What is coming off that plant at the end of the day? Is it 10%? Is it 20%? And that's kind of what we gauge a lot of our feeding strategies on, is that runoff percentage. How much the plant's drinking each day.
I think it's so critical that we remember what we're trying to collect the data for. All this corresponds to the quality, the response we're trying to elicit from the plants. So the data is only good if it helps you make the decisions to actually grow a high quality flower.
Again, it's back to basics, like you're saying, you know what I mean? You gotta run that simple program and then the graphs make sense. And then you can make a change based off that information.
Yeah, and if you've been growing for a long time, you have to take the graphs into account and just remember what you know, because if you're on a bunch of cultivators and you just start going off the numbers, and you really kind of have to make the transition to trust the numbers to a certain extent, but also just remember to trust yourself too, because I see a bunch of people crash roads because you're trying to stay in a certain parameter, but your Jedi senses tell you need to back off what you don't. So you need to take both into account. But they are both important, and if you have a lot of experience using the sensors, it starts to connect a lot of dots. It starts to kind of explain how you used to do stuff and the traffic and why it worked, and the 2024 way to do it now with the sensors.
Hey, what time do your Jedi senses tell you to start bulking?
One more time.
What day do your Jedi senses tell you to start bulking?
Well, I've been going off of Mo's Jedi senses recently. So for the LCG, not at first, obviously, but I had to do it. So the LCG, can I tell him, Mo?
Bro.
Can I tell him? That's what we're here for.
Bro.
That's what we're here for.
Give him a song.
So we're going to start walking a little earlier than you normally would traditionally, before the 21-ish day, general pluck day or transition to bulking day.
No. So I've gone day 15, I've gone day 14, I've gone day 18, I've gone day 21, and I've gone day 24, all for different reasons, right? A lot of it was to do back to Sean's point, right? All the data and the graphs and all this shit's great, but if you can't walk in the room and look at the plant and understand what that means by doing those things, well, then it doesn't matter, right? So I think, you need to go in there, you need to look at the plants and see what it is they need, and because you can see what it is they need, then you apply those things okay, yeah, LCG is a slow, it's not a big stretcher. I need to get it to be a little bit taller, especially if you're doing, short veggies, 10 to 12 day veggies. And so what kind of signals do I need to send to that plant to have it grow more vegetatively, right? Make the room warmer, right? Typically more vegetative environments are warmer. And then feed it more often, right? Irrigate it more so that things that they're short irrigation feeds more often, right? Will be a vegetative signal. Shorter pulses, 1 to 3%, will be vegetative signals. And by sending those things at a day 13 or day 14, if you want to accomplish some extra stretch in 7 days, you can do that. However, if you're growing in a double stack where you can't go past 50 inches, how do you push that, right? And so now I'm not shooting any vegetative signals, right? I want to make sure that I'm always sometimes giving salinity stress to the plant where I'm really driving EC higher than most people. I'm too ashamed to say, high, high as fuck. You know, but that would, you know, still allow me to control that stretch and then turn on vegetative signals now that the stretching phase is done. And I got them to the height that I want them to go, and now I can shoot vegetative signals to bulk them out, right? So the when is dependent on like your situation and where you are. And I think the sensors help us get there and see that it's happening, but you know, without being able to walk in the room and look at a plant and make good decisions to say, hey, I know at this height, which, you know, depending on the distance on your lights, I can get 900 to 1,000 U-mol to deliver the DLI that I need for this plant to feed everything else, right?
It's funny, LCG is one of those strains we're always talking about. One of the traits is it typically doesn't tend to stack super well, right? So I think in general we're trying to run super generally towards the end of the stretch for a lot of strains, but I think with LCG where it doesn't stack super well, we're trying to introduce that bud set earlier so the plant starts focusing its energy on that bud site development. Like LCG candies in general tend to have that trait where it has super long petiole coming off of like, you know, what we call the satellite branches, where the nuts start up in like, you know, you got kind of a big stack. So I think it's one of those things where you want to try and add weight to where the bud sites are.
And it seems like LCG kind of transitions a little quickly. Right? I mean, like once you're day 14, 15, it's really stopped stretching. I mean, there's a little bit, but it slows down a lot right around then.
I would say we always look at the clues of the plant when they're producing pistils and running it one time, seeing how much it stretches, and understanding that life cycle of the plant from just a standpoint before you try to implement maybe more watering cycles or some LSC training on it for whatever situation you're in. But that's kind of what we go by, is looking at those clues of the plant, when the onside of the pistils are coming, when the stop of the stretch is, and then the next one around we try to really make it that, you try to elaborate on that and then start controlling it.
That goes back to recording data, right? So like being able to say somewhere like I know do at this height, right? And then being able to see trends in time over that, right? And then that's how we get to learn, you know, what these cultivars do, right? And then applying that back into our production.
Great question. What else? I think that's going to wrap up the panel, guys. Thank you so much for participating in this. Shout out to all the panelists. Big love to Jefferson.